Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and in what time you are viewing this recording. I would like to extend my greetings to you and welcome to my class. And today we are going to discuss our review and reflection of the reading assignment that I gave you. And last time I asked you to read the book of John Paul Lederer, which is The Moral Imagination and the Art of Peace Building and Conflict Resolution. So, without much ado, let me share my screen so that I can show you the PowerPoint presentation I have prepared for this purpose. And today we are going to reflect on the work of John Paul Lederer. And conflict resolution is one of the most important topic in peace education. It's one of the thematic uh, uh, theme in peace education. And as such, it also merits a long discussion. And actually, we can take up a whole semester or even 2 semesters to study conflict resolution. And there are many different methods of conflict resolution. And we are not going to delve on all of this, but I would like us to reflect on the book of John Paul Lederer, which is on the moral imagination, wherein he tries to propose a different way or a different approach in the study of conflict resolution. So itong mga bagay na ito ay nakita niya sapagkat na-observe niya na in trying to resolve conflict, sometimes we end up into that cycle of no-ending cycle of violence. Meaning to say, we try to resolve conflict and yet we end up badly. And we tend to repeat all of this. And it seems that the process of conflict resolution, there's no end to this solution after all. So he was trying to reflect on this, and he was using his own experience and his own thesis and his own experience in conflict resolution to advance his ideas. And in fact, at the beginning of the book, in his introduction, he was saying that he was influenced by his background, especially his in religious background, especially being a member of the Society of Friends or Quakers, and the peaceful advocacy of this religious organization has shaped and influenced his attitude and way of dealing with conflict resolution. Now, what is the moral imagination? So this is a term coined by John Paul Lederer. So the term moral imagination typically refers to the ability of individuals or groups to imagine and envision a more just and peaceful world. It involves the capacity to empathize with others, to see situations from different perspectives, and to creatively explore nonviolent solutions to conflict. So let us try to analyze this definition of the moral imagination. So it says the ability of individuals or group to imagine and envision a more just and peaceful world. And I know some of you are also familiar, maybe you will be familiar with the study conducted by the UP as commissioned by the NEDA, if I am not mistaken, which is the Ambition 2040. This is the kind of envisioning that within 20 years, this is the kind of thing that the Filipino would like to have for themselves as an ideal end. So it is called Ambition 2040. So there in that kind of study, the Filipinos were surveyed as to what kind of life would make them happy and contented. And they laid out several items there in that study. And I'm saying this because I would like to set this as an example of how a group of people envisions their future. So sometimes, sometimes it's very hard for us to think of the future. Kaya ngayon, nauuso yung tinatawag natin na futures thinking. Actually, hindi yan bago. It's not a new, no, but it's just becoming a fad today. But it has been done before. And in organizational planning, it's always that we should be futuristic. We should be able to think of the future. We should be able to imagine a future for us, not only one future, but we can even imagine several alternative future for whatever things that we want for ourselves. So it says that it also involves the capacity to empathize with others, because later on we will be talking about the web of connections na sinasabi dito ni Jean Paul Ledera. And because with this establishing this web of connections, we are able to establish our connections and identifications with other people. We are able to determine the degree of how we are related to all the protagonists and the antagonists in the conflict. And the purpose of this is for us to be able to empathize with others, meaning to say, to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of the other, to understand how they feel, to understand their aspirations and ambitions, or what they think best for them. This is very difficult for us because in conflict situations, conflict parties always tend to demonize. They demonize each other. They think always of the bad of the others, and sometimes because of the emotions involved in this kind of situation, they are not able to see the good in others, but rather they look others as something which is um, not beneficial for them. That's why we fail to empathize. And sometimes we also fail to listen to other people. And one of the reasons why we cannot empathize we find it difficult to empathize with others is because we do not listen to people. Sometimes we listen physically to what others are saying, but sometimes our purpose is to rebut what the other is saying instead of trying to listen in order to understand, or maybe at least we try to suspend our judgment in order to be able to perceive what others perceive and how others feel. And that's how we can empathize with others, because we have to realize not only our own dignity, but also we should be able to realize the dignity of the other persons, that these people that we are dealing with are also persons, are also individuals like us, with aspirations, with dignity, who are seeking respect and recognition from them, from others. Okay. Another is um, the moral imagination is also the ability um, to see situations from a different perspective. You know, you have heard about the story about the different blind men, the several blind men who were asked to describe how an elephant looked like. So since they cannot see, they don't have the power to perceive everything. They only focus on the area that was given to them. That's why they give conflicting and different descriptions of the same elephant. But if only they could come together and agree and consolidate their findings about their sense of feel of the elephant, then they will be able at least to come up with a better picture. That's why it's important that we should learn and see situations from a different perspective, from different vantage point. This will help us in understanding and perceiving and developing empathy towards the others. And then also to creatively explore non-violent solutions to conflict. So we should be, the way to become non-violent is to be able to explore possible solutions to the conflict without resorting to violence. And this is where the moral imagination will come. This is where our creativity and critical thinking will come. Okay. There are important aspects of the moral imagination. As we glean from the readings, there are at least 5. You have empathy, creativity, hope, listening, and reconciliation. So first, empathy. The moral imaginations begin with the ability to empathize with the suffering and perspectives of others, especially those who may be involved in a conflict, and it involves recognizing the humanity and dignity of all the parties involved. So, papasok dito yung konsepto ng human rights, human dignity. And if we could only develop that ability and attitude to perceive others as individuals with human dignity, then it is easy for us to be able to practice empathy. So second is creativity. It involves thinking creatively about how to transform conflict and address underlying issues without resorting to violence. This can include considering new approaches, building bridges, and finding common ground. Oh, so you see? Kasi tayo mga tao minsan sometimes ang ating pananaw ay para tayong beast of burden, para tayong yung mga kabayo na sometimes we put nilalagyan natin ng tabing ang ating mga mata in order to be able for us to focus our sight in front of us, but we fail to look at the sides. We fail to look at the other vantage point and from other perspective. So in conflict resolution, in providing solution to our conflict, we should be creative. We should be willing to explore different avenues, and most importantly, we should be able to arrive at a common ground. And this is only made possible when there is dialogue. Okay. The third is hope. Yan. The third is hope. Okay. I'm trying to look into this. Moral imagination is often associated with hope for a better future. It involves the belief that positive change is possible and that conflicts can be resolved through non-violent means. So, pag sinabi nating moral imagination, ibig sabihin, may kasabay din itong pag-asa. So, we hope. Hope is a virtue. It's a virtue. It's not a skill, but rather it is a virtue. It is an attitude. It is a way of thinking. So, kumbaga may positive, may negative. Sometimes, when we are on the positive side, we always think that things are always possible. And even in situations where it is impossible, we still hope. Or maybe even in most difficult situations, we still develop that ability to hope. Okay. And number 4 is listening. Active and empathic listening is a key component of moral imagination. It's about truly understanding the concerns, the needs, and aspirations of others. So we need to develop also the skill of listening. So pag sinabi nating listening, we should be able to suspend all prejudgment and to listen with the purpose of understanding the others, to know where they come from, to understand what they really mean. And I think this is the meaning of listening. Minsan, sinasabi natin, nakikinig tayo. Oo, siyempre, nakikinig tayo. Palagi naman tayo nakikinig. But sometimes, hindi tayo marunong umintindi. Kumbaga sa pagbabasa, marunong tayong bumasa, pero at the same time, wala tayong sense of comprehension. So in the same way in listening, we can say that we listen, but sometimes we don't have that ability to really listen in a way of understanding the perspective of the other. Hindi naman natin maaalis sa ating sarili yung mga biases natin, yung mga kinikilingan natin, sapagkat all of us have different backgrounds, we came from different places, we have different places of work, we have different interests, we are situated in different kinds of environment, and these factors shape our it shapes our way of thinking. Pero sometimes, since mga tao tayo, since we are intelligent creatures, we also have the ability to set aside these biases and then try to listen objectively to what the others is saying. And this is the kind of listening that we really need to foster, we need to develop in ourselves if we wish to come up with a solution to our problem. Okay, the fifth aspect of the moral imagination is reconciliation. Moral imagination often leads to a commitment to reconciliation and the healing of relationship. It seeks to repair the social fabric torn by conflicting and promote mutual understanding. Kaya siguro, maybe some of us are not religiously inclined, But if you have read the Bible, read the gospel, when Jesus was talking about forgiveness, when Jesus was talking about forgiving others, asking for forgiveness, it always involves restitution, because coupled with reconciliation is also justice. That's why, do you remember the story of Matthew? Also, the story of Zacchaeus. These are tax collectors who were considered at the time of Christ as traitors to the nation. So when they heard Jesus and when their hearts were touched by the message of Jesus, they became repentant and said that they were willing even to return even half of what they have to the people, because they know that they have stolen all of this, and they are willing to return this double to the people, to the persons whom they have offended. And this is an illustration to us to see how reconciliation is at work, because in reconciliation, we always seek to repair the social fabric torn by conflict and promote mutual understanding. Because it is only when there is healing and reconciliation that we can move forward and improve our relationships. Okay. So ito, pinapaliwanag natin yung tinatawag natin. Unahin muna natin yung empathy. Yan, empathy, understanding the other's perspective, listening actively, recognition of humanity, emotional connection, conflict transformation, conflict resolution, bridge building, and reconciliation. Then, yung tinatawag natin na creativity, it involves thinking beyond conventional solutions, exploring new pathways, imagination, innovation, adaptability, empathy, and perspective shifting, and community involvement or long-term vision. So thinking beyond conventional solutions. Kasi minsan, pag sinabi natin conventional solutions, this involves um, the usual way of doing things. Okay. Okay, exploring new pathways. Creative thinking in peace building involves exploring new pathways. This may include considering alternative ways of addressing the root causes of conflict, engaging with different stakeholders, or finding non-violent means of resolving disputes. Yan, so exploring new pathways. That's why one time I was asked, how do we solve the insurgency problem, because the insurgency problem in our country is almost 50 years. My answer is that the solution to this problem is not through military means. Usually, conventionally, we always think of military means, military tactics, but I think military tactics is not sufficient to address these issues, because there are underlying social and economic factors that has been feeding this insurgency, and these are the things that should be addressed, because you cannot just eliminate the enemy, but rather we have to look into the root causes of this conflict, and we can do it through by creativity, exploring new pathways. So imagination, for example, Ledrock encourages individuals and groups to use their imagination to envision a future that is free from conflict and characterized by justice, reconciliation, and cooperation. Imagination helps in visualizing what peace could look like and how to get there. So, kailangan imaginative tayo, di ba? Imaginative tayo. Imagine I'll give you one example. For example, I will be using again some illustration coming from the gospel. You know, if we contrast the way of the world and the kingdom of God, in the kingdom of God, people are characterized by love of one another. So when you love one another, you always think of the good of the other. You're always willing to forgive. You're always willing to give preference to the other person. Yan. But when you think of this present world that we are in, this is characterized by selfishness. We always think of our own self-interest before others. So you can imagine, what if in a world everyone will be thinking of their own interests or of getting ahead of one another? So if we always think of this, then eventually all of us will be destroyed. Nobody will survive because everybody will be pursuing their own interest. And precisely this is what is happening in international relations in the world that we see today. Why is there always the threat of war? Why is there always the threat of conflict? Because everyone is thinking about their national interest. They're always thinking of advancing their advancing their own um, interest. Yan. So that is another illustration. So, but if you think of the kingdom of God where everyone is willing to forgive and to prefer one another, then you develop a nurturing atmosphere, an atmosphere of respect and nurture, and the atmosphere of preservation. So yeah, that's an example of imagination and innovation. So innovation, creative approaches often involve innovation which can manifest in various forms such as new methods of communication, unique negotiation strategies, or the application of technology to conflict resolution efforts. Sometimes we can even go beyond or outside of the formal settings, or we can even go beyond outside of the protocols and explore creative ways to resolve our conflict. Then adaptability. Creativity also involves adaptability and flexibility. Conflict situations are dynamic and can change rapidly. So therefore, ang mga people engaged in conflict resolution should be adaptable, because we have to realize that the conflict dynamics is changes over time. So we have to adapt and change our approach. Then we also have empathy and perspective shifting. Creativity in peace building often involves the ability to empathize with conflict parties and shift one's perspective to see the conflict from different angles. This can help in finding a common ground and creative solutions. Then, seven, we have community involvement. Creative peace building often involves engaging with a broader community and drawing on the collective wisdom and creativity of community members. It recognizes that solutions to conflict may come from unexpected sources. Okay, so we have also long-term vision. So creativity in peace building is often guided by a long-term vision of sustainable peace. It is not solely focused on short-term fixes, but aims to address the underlying issues that perpetuate our conflict. So hindi ba rin yung nakahalata na minsan sa mga governments, di ba, yung kanilang mga solusyon sa mga problema like conflict, insurgency, or criminality sometimes are only stopgap or maybe reactive. So seldom do they excuse me, seldom do they look into the long-term perspective. Yan. Kaya dapat kailangan makikita din natin yung long-term perspective sa uh, anong yon. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next. Ito yung hope. Number one, we have positive vision, motivation for change, counterbalancing despair. So very important ito ha. Kasi minsan um, ang mga tao when they are in these desperate situations, they become very negative and despairing. Like for example, may nabasa akong isang article talking about the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. Makikita mo yung anger, makikita mo yung bitterness, especially in the way the people express, especially the Palestinians, how they express their sentiments, and these are examples of despair. We should be able to counterbalance this despair with hope. Yan. So Lederach acknowledged that conflicts can often lead to despair, resignation, and a sense of hopelessness. In this context, hope serves as a counterbalance to despair. It offers an alternative perspective and provides the energy needed to break the cycle of violence and hostility. So, dapat meron tayong ganyan, hope. Okay. Generating creative solutions, sustaining peace-building efforts, building trust. So, hope can also build trust among conflicting parties. When parties involved in a conflict sense that there is hope for a positive resolution, they may be more willing to engage in dialogue and negotiation. So pag nakikita nilang may tiwala sila, may pag-asa, na-encourage natin silang makilahok sa mga dialogue. Kasi minsan ang mga tao, pag medyo desperate na sila, sometimes they become resigned to their situations. Parang tinatanggap na lang nila na ganun yung pangyayaring yun. Parang okay na yun. Yan, may sense of resignation na. Parang hindi maganda yun. So kailangan magkaroon ng building trust. Then you also have healing and reconciliation, community resilience, and the long-term perspective. Then another is listening. Kanina na ipaliwanag ko na ito yung tungkol sa listening. Like you have to have a deep and active engagement. So Lederer's concept of listening goes beyond passive hearing. So it goes beyond passive hearing. He emphasizes active and engaged listening, where individuals are fully present and in attendance to what others are saying. It involves focusing on the speaker, their words, and their emotions. So hindi yung nagsisigawan, hindi yung nagdidebate. Kung hindi, we teach ourselves, we encourage ourselves to listen to the narratives of others. Then empathic understanding, trying to understand the others. Then creating a safe space. So kailangan bigyan din natin ng daan o kaya bigyan din natin ng space ang iba na mag-express ng kanilang emotion, or halimbawa pag medyo mabigat ang mga pinag-uusapan, pwede namang magkaroon muna ng recess or suspension ng discussion, and then later on, pag natapos na yung recreation, then they can come back again to discuss the more serious matters. Then also, listening also involves being sensitive to non-verbal communication. So we should be able to take the cue from the non-verbal communications of others, and at the same time, we should also be willing to utilize this in order to cut across to the other side our message. Okay, so feedback and reflective summaries. After listening to someone, Ledra encourages providing feedback or reflective summaries of what has been said. This can help ensure that both parties understand each other's perspective and can help identify areas of agreement and disagreement. Then building trust. Active listening is a critical component of building trust in conflict resolution processes. Then conflict transformation. Ledera sees listening as a tool for transforming conflicts. By actively listening to all parties involved, mediators and peace builders can create opportunities for dialogue and understanding and reconciliation. Remember that the role of the conflict mediator is to be able to facilitate learning. And one way of not facilitate learning, facilitate communication. And the only way to facilitate communication is for the mediator to be able to help the participants in the conflict to listen to each other, to learn how to listen, or even to deliver the message of the other across and vice versa. Okay, so in that way, by delivering these messages and helping the participants understand the meaning of what being said, they will be able to create a possible and a good climate for dialogue and reconciliation. And then also community engagement in the context of community level conflict resolution. Listening extends to engaging with the broader community and respecting diverse voices and perspective. It involves facilitating conversations that allow for the collective expression of grievances, of hopes, and aspirations. Then, of course, reconciliation. Lastly, healing and transformation, relationship and repair. I have already explained this to you before. And also cultural sensitivity. Recognizing the cultural and social context of the conflict is crucial in reconciliation efforts. And we should also be very careful with and mindful of culture, because culture is equivalent to values, and people are attached to their values. They derive their identity and their emotions from their sense of values. And then of course there should be restorative justice, because after conflict, after the trauma, after all the pain, there must be reconstruction and reconciliation. Okay. Ngayon, si Ledra also made mention in that book, the web of connection. So the term web of connection is not a specific concept of or theory commonly associated with a particular author or field. However, it could refer to the idea that individuals and entities are interconnected through various relationships, networks, and interaction, which collectively form a complex web of connection. This concept can be applied to various contexts, including social, economic, political, and environmental systems. So, ano ba itong web na sinasabi ni Ledra? He was using the spider's web as a metaphor. Kumbaga if we look at a different metaphor, parang itong yung nanood ka sa Facebook, tingnan mo yung Facebook mo, doon sa listahan mo ng friends mo, meron kang mga friends of friends, di ba? Parang ganun. So pag nakita mo na yung friends of friends ng friends of friends, nakikita mo yung relationship. Minsan may nadidiscover kang relationship. Ito pala si kilala ni ito pala itong kaibigan ko pala ay kaibigan din ng isang kaibigan ko. Itong kaibigan ko pala, kaibigan niya ang kaaway ko. So you're able to figure, to conceptualize a web of connection. It is very important to develop this web of connection, because this is one way for us to come up with a moral imagination, a creative way to resolve our conflict. Because conflict among people is also personal in a way. So we should be able to touch base with the personal perception of people. We should be able to relate with relationship, because when we discover a way of connecting to the other person, it facilitates communication, and communication also facilitates reconciliation. Okay. Now, here are a few ways that the web of connection idea must be used. First, in social relationship. In social context, the web of connection refers to the intricate network of relationship that people have with family members, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. This relationship can have a significant impact on individuals' lives and influence their decisions and actions. Okay. Then also you have economic interdependence. Economically, the web of connection highlights the interdependence of businesses, industries, and economies. The global economy, for example, is characterized by complex supply chains and the trade networks that connect countries and regions. So, lalo na sa economic interdependence, di ba? Like for example, halimbawa, when you use your iPhone, saan ba ang iPhone? An iPhone is a product uh, of the Apple company in Cupertino, California. But most of these iPhones are produced in China, and the materials used to assemble this phone in China is also purchased from other countries, also imported from other countries. So there is a web of economic interdependence. So if there is an adverse situation in the supply chain, it may affect also the production and the economy. Okay. Then political alliances. In politics, the web of connection can refer to the alliances, partnerships, and collaborations among countries, political parties, interest groups, and international organizations. These connections shape international relations and policy decisions. Okay, environmental interactions. When discussing the environment, the web of connection underscores the intricate relationship between different species, ecosystems, and natural processes. Changes in one part of the ecosystem can have a ripple effect throughout the web of connections. Then, information and communication. In the digital age, the web of connection is often associated with with the internet and the vast network of information and communication channels that connect people worldwide. This web enables the flow of information, ideas, and influences across the borders. Then we have the interdisciplinary approaches. Some interdisciplinary fields, such as the systems theory or network science, explore the web of connection within and between various systems and the disciplines. They study how interactions between elements in a system or network can lead to emergent properties and behavior. So thank you, my friends, for listening, and I hope that with this our discussion, you're able to pick up some important nuggets in the moral imagination of um, um, John Paul Lederer. Although there are some criticisms in his book, um, despite of this criticism, John Poledera was able to bring to us a different perspective in the process of peace building and conflict resolution. Kasi itong mga insights na isinulat niya doon sa librong yon, ito ay nanggagaling sa kanyang karanasan, especially yung mga karanasan niya doon sa Colombia. Naging resource person siya doon sa mga talakayan, sa mga conflict resolution, etc. etc. At ito ang kanyang nakitang mga insights. Kaya pag pinag-aralan natin lalo na sa iba-ibang level ng conflict, like for example international relations, intrastate or communal conflict, may mapag-a-applyan itong mga bagay na ito. And especially that I'm very interested in international relations, naisip ko medyo mahirap din itong i-apply doon sa mahirap din siyang i-apply doon sa international relations, kasi sa international conflict usually these processes are boxed in protocols. Marami silang mga protocols nito at medyo mahirap ayusin. So I hope that with this we conclude our video lecture, and I will be giving you an activity, an asynchronous activity, which I will be posting on our group chat and in our Google Classroom. So please just try to stand by and try to wait for the queue, and then you can enter the Google Classroom and find for yourself our activity. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that all of you are doing well and fine.